Hello and welcome back to FlowState on this extremely windy day. Oh fuck, look at this helicopter. Whoa! Can you see it? Woo! Man, I love it. I love helicopters. I love airplanes. It's cool as shit. It's cool as shit. All right, anyways, welcome back to FlowState. How's your week been? Drop in the comments. Let me know what you're dealing with, how you're feeling, what kind of state you're showing up with today. This is all about setting aligned goals this week. We are going to be going deep into the process of setting aligned goals. Now there's an airplane over there. I hope the audio is good. If you're new to this channel, welcome to Everyday Action. My name is Eric Fate, and I'm your guide. I'm your host. I am responsible for challenging you to be able to extract meaningful action that comes from within. The content rhythm that I produce is all centered around the Growth Blueprint Framework, which is a curriculum that I train, teach, and coach from. If you're aware of the curriculum and you're ready to take the next step, click the link in the video description, the first one, and join our Thursday live cohort. If you're interested in going further, go to the website and apply for one-on-one coaching. The content rhythm is structured on an 8-week cycle. And I start every FlowState podcast simply by articulating what that is and where we are in the rhythm. So this week, we're talking about aligned goals, our aligned action that we're basing off of everything that has come before it. Hold on, I got distracted by some kind of artifact here. I have yet to fully decide where I'm gonna go on our little walk today. It's been raining like crazy, and I don't really feel like getting all fucked up down the path to the ocean. So we're gonna just flow, and we'll see where we go. Anyways, the weekly content rhythm is all centered around the 8 core pillars of the Growth Blueprint. Pillar number 1, assessment and readiness. Getting clarity on where you are, not tomorrow, not yesterday, but now. This is so vital because if we don't take stock of our current life situation, it's very challenging to effectively measure the progress or the lack of progress we're making toward achieving our personal development goals. This is step 1, and I go through this process with all my clients because it is so vital for them to look inward and take stock of where they are currently. We talk about the inner ecosystem, which is a series of connected concepts that we all are operating from. And we then create a baseline for growth. After we get clarity on where we are, we shift gears into vitality. Vitality is so foundational to being able to develop the energy that is required within you to effectively tackle, attack, fall forward, charge up, battle, whatever you want to call it, the world in front of you. It's not just about sitting with this idea that things are going to unfold in a way that you're going to be able to handle them in an easy kind of, afternoon tea vibe. This is highly unlikely, which is why vitality is really a foundational concept to master. Vitality is not just about movement, it's about recovery, it's about nutrition, it's about rest, social connection, and creating the energy within you, creating that opportunity for growth. It all comes from creating a vitality framework for you to live inside. Without the active energy to do whatever it is that you want to do, you're not going to be able to achieve those goals. And if you are, you're an outlier. If you are, you're the exception to the rule. This is something that I think is really lost on society as a whole. If you're on social media and, let's say, exposed to the health and wellness community, that is really the exception. That's like the aspirational individuals that are selling you on a dream. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not reality. These are individuals who have dedicated their entire life to vitality. And because of that, their physique is representational of that. So for most people, here's an interesting statistic. In the United States, you're more likely to be someone who has made $1 million than to have an exposed abdominal core. So you're more likely to make $1 million than to have a six-pack. That's how challenging it is to be able to tap into a peak state of vitality. Now, it doesn't mean that you need a six-pack in order to be well-rounded and healthy, but in general, they kind of go hand in hand, because it's not just about training, it's about nutrition as well. So we really educate ourselves on the importance of vitality, creating a plan that is actionable, that can be leveraged to empower you to charge up your power plant. And without that commitment, without that process, it becomes very difficult for you to move forward in this framework. It becomes very difficult for you to willingly put yourself in challenging positions that are going to require your brain to function at a high capacity for extended periods of time. And I'm not just talking about personal development. I'm talking about your life. I'm talking about the way you show up for yourself, the way you show up for your family, the people that you're serving. All of this requires dedication. Whoa. That is terrifying. This older person just took a corner here in a crosswalk. Wow, that was crazy. So, vitality. It is truly, I'm at a loss for words, really. The level of importance here is it's basically everything is tied back to this one idea of operating from a place of empowerment and control and alignment, or a reactive state. So you know that a good night's sleep can cure basically almost anything, because I know that you know this because you've lived it. It's almost impossible to be an adult and to not realize this, because it's happened to everybody, you know? So anyways, after vitality, we flow into core values. Look, at the end of the day, you either choose your values for you or they're being chosen for you. That's it, period. End of story. And how are they being chosen for you? They're being chosen for you by society, by your parents, by your religious background or lack of religious background, your socioeconomic situation, what color shoes you wore when you grew up. I mean, all of the factors that exist in life to be able to guide and shape you in a way that would instill some values and principles in your life from which you are then filtering the decisions you're making and choices moving forward. It's really that simple. So, from my perspective, you want to invest in getting clarity on what those values are, because they're your guiding principle for how you show up every single day. You are channeling these values, whether you're aware of it or not. And so part of this framework is creating that space within you to be able to be introspective and understand what is important to you, what is not important to you, what you're willing to fight for, and what you're willing not to fight for. It's not just about knowing what you want, it's also about knowing what you don't want, which I would say is probably more important. Because we all default to our lowest baseline. We all default as humans to the thing that we're preserving to keep in terms of our status, in terms of our life situation. So much of it is really less about growth and more about not falling below a certain baseline. This is huge. So we're moving through the curriculum. We have awareness on where we currently are in our life. Then we're charging up our power plant, our internal engine, to be able to create the energy that we need to attack everything that we want in life. Then we shift into core values, the basis for which we make all decisions, all choices, how we invest our time, everything. After that, we shift into mindset. Mindset is, at its core, a simple idea, but a lifetime worth of mastery and development. So, mindset in general is, for most, fixed. We are reacting to circumstance, we are reacting to our environment, we are reacting to what people are expecting from us. And it doesn't give us much space and time to be able to think things through very clearly. And again, we're basing everything off of our values. Hold on. Got to sneeze here. Whew. So, voilà. So, with that in mind, we're looking to shift from a limiting belief structure about ourselves, about the world. Oh, I gotta sneeze again. Fuck. Do you ever have that where you're like, impossible just to sneeze once? Oof. All right. So, fuck, man. All right. It's crazy. So now I just lost my train of thought. All right, mindset, limiting belief to growth oriented mindset. That's really the magic sauce. Not allowing for things to absorb into you and then for you to then operate from this feedback loop of deficiency, of I'm not good enough, of this is hard, so I'm going to default to easy, or this is hard, I'm going to default to comfort. And every time we choose that mindset, we're setting ourselves up for failure because we're allowing our emotional state to dictate to our higher brain capacity to basically give in to the impulse that we want and not leaning into that delayed gratification or leaning into discipline, right? Discipline only works in one way. It only works when you're doing something that you would prefer not to be doing. Discipline is doing the thing you don't want to do. Discipline is not doing the thing that you enjoy doing. That's not being disciplined. That's just doing something you love to do. Like, do you enjoy going to the gym? If you enjoy going to the gym, discipline is not applicable here. If you hate going to the gym, it's like pulling teeth, and you still do it, and you do it consistently, independent of how you feel or what you want, that is discipline. That's showing up for yourself, honoring yourself, loving yourself in a way that is so unbelievably powerful. And it's not about the immediacy of that win, it's about that compounding rewiring of intent. This is something that I think is overlooked in terms of how people frame discipline and what discipline actually is. And I think that there's a misconception there as to the reality of discipline and this perception of what discipline is. So, shifting our mindset from reactive and limiting, or even simply operating from an acceptance of awareness, which is simply living at whatever baseline standard is for you, as opposed to shifting into the state of anti-fragility and growth as a mindset, never allowing for micro failures or micro derailments to sink their teeth into your thinking to then cap what you determine is possible in whatever activity or season of life that you're currently in right now. Mindset is so important because it truly is the defining gap between what is determined as a challenge or almost not possible in terms of what you think the outcome is going to be, and going head first, diving off the diving board with the intention that whatever you're confronted with is not going to deter you from what the outcome that you have chosen that you want is. So powerful. Mindset training is really, it's so foundational to personal development, to growth as a whole, to being able to operate from from a place of empowerment that isn't just like this word or concept that has been regurgitated so many times. It's about getting clarity first and foremost on why the mindset is being shaped in the way it is. It's not just to say, okay, I'm operating from a growth-oriented mindset. Well, what does that actually mean for you? And what system do you have to ensure that that mindset is going to stay the way you want it? Because it's inevitable you're going to be confronted with a challenge that is going to rock you to your core. I mean, that's just part of life, you know? It could be a medical issue, it could be a major death in the family that you were not expecting, that has completely shattered your whole world for a limited amount of time. And I say limited because in general, time heals all wounds. And so how quickly can we recover is really the main thing with anything. After mindset, we go and focus on time management and prioritization. What does that even mean, time management and prioritization? You know, we are all operating on the same 24 hours, right? Everybody gets the same 24 hours. And yet some people are able to effectively accomplish a huge amount in 24 hours while getting enough sleep, while investing in their personal development and time for themselves and family and social commitments. And the output of all of the effort at the end of the day is one of feeling like you're operating from abundance, one of feeling like you've accomplished so much of what you set out to do. Part of that is by reducing the total number of items that you're focused on in that day. This is something that we go deep into because I think people try to do too much in general. And it has to do with how to really focus on short-term goals and how those short-term goals fit into a long-term vision. And I think people tend to focus more on short-term vision than long-term vision. And that's really a detrimental approach because it's so short-sighted that when you zoom out and try to focus on like your 5-year objective or 10-year, 20-year, whatever it is, you know, you don't really have enough time to breathe when you're organizing your schedule. We're not even at goals yet because we need to first educate ourselves on how to effectively use our time. And we're looking at an optimal range between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. There's a gap, there's a big window there, and depending on the individual, you really, for most people, I think less than 7 hours of consistent sleep is detrimental to your well-being, your cognitive ability to perform at a high level, your ability to train adequately hard enough to put your body into stressful situations where you're able to handle it with resilience and to have the capacity to keep your wits around you. You need sleep, you need adequate sleep. And if there was a thing that you were to focus on in this year, in this 2026 season of life, it would be to get better at sleep. Just make that a priority. It's a challenge. Most people will fail because they're not setting themselves up for success. And they're still not operating from alignment. They're being pushed into different directions. And that is having a detrimental impact on their sleep and their schedule. Getting locked into time management and prioritization as a lifestyle will only serve your interests in the long term. It will allow you to achieve more in less time, and it will be a catalyst for you to be more realistic with the quality of the output that you're able to produce. Using your calendar as an active journal is a extremely powerful tool. So I'm a big fan of this concept because most people, most professionals are using a calendar in one form or another. And a lot of the people that I work with are already engaged in a reflective practice in some form or another. So what we're doing is fusing those two together into one ongoing daily rhythm that requires you to restructure your approach to how to use a calendar and then how to use that data to inform how to plan better in accordance with reality. It's about documenting reality. So, in other words, the concept that I teach and I encourage everybody to try is to use their calendar as a living representation of time. So every day, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, should be reflected on your calendar, whichever system you use, whether it's digital, whether it's old school, whatever. And I advocate for people to create multiple calendars. This is much easier in a digital, setting with different colors, so that when you glance at it, you know that your health and wellness is in one color, your personal stuff is in another color, your business is represented in another color. If you have multiple things going on for work, then you have different calendars for each respective business or each project, let's say. And so you wake up in the morning, you have your good morning ritual, whatever that is for you. It could be an hour, it could be 30 minutes. And you just block that off. You know, from like 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., you are doing all your good morning stuff. If you have kids and family, then, you have different rhythms, you have different structures that you need to operate in. And normally, especially if you're doing traditional school and you dropping kids off or whatever the schedule is, you just want to make sure that you're building in time to do it in a way that doesn't induce stress. And if you find you don't have the space that you really need to be relaxed, you should go back the night before and understand where you prioritized your evening routine, how that was done. And if you're not getting enough sleep, then you have to start the day before in the evening and say, hey, I'm going to start my evening routine 1 hour earlier so I get to bed 1 hour earlier. And so after about a week, you'll have your Sunday to Sunday weekly view of every day being displayed to you as different color blocks. The objective here is that your morning and evening routine are more or less consistent, or as consistent as you can possibly make them. So you will be better served in the long run if you can go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time. And it doesn't matter if it's Saturday or Sunday, whatever. Try to create a schedule that works for you. And where you're probably going to have to restructure is in the evening, because so many of us are choosing to stay up later doing mindless things like watching something or scrolling or whatever, and that having such a profound impact on your morning, and because of that, the next day. So I really encourage everybody that I work with to focus on their evening routine first. you have to start the night before, and you have to give yourself adequate space and time to wind down and to ensure that you're preparing your body for a restful, restorative night's sleep. Because you've been there. When you've woken up from feeling rested, it's so different than when you wake up having had 2 hours of sleep, 3 hours of sleep, even 6 hours of sleep. If you get 6 hours of sleep consistently and you think you're operating in peak state, you're not. You might be leaving so much on the table, and you have nothing to lose. You have everything to gain from simply focusing on trying to extend how much sleep you get per night. Because the reality is that if you're in bed for 8 hours, you're not getting 8 hours of sleep. Maybe if you're in bed for 9 hours, you'll get 8 hours of sleep. Most people are not sleeping consistently the amount of time that they're in bed for. And so if you know that sleep is going to drive your performance, why would you do anything to compromise that? That's literally doing something to sabotage your performance. That's literally doing something to put you in a compromised state when you need to be operating at peak performance, because it's only going to serve you. You have your ambition, you have your goals, you have your rhythm, and why would you do anything to compromise how you feel in the daytime to be able to effectively move the needle forward in a meaningful way? It makes no fucking sense. And yet so many people are struggling with this, in part because they don't have their values locked in. They don't know how they're operating. They're operating in someone else's algorithm, not theirs. This is the work we do to drive structure, clarity, and momentum. At its core, the outcome of working with me, the curriculum that I teach, is all centered around clarity, structure, and momentum. There's a lot more to it, but at its core, that's the promise. That's the outcome. So there's so much to say and to talk about within the time management and prioritization aspect, especially the active calendar strategy. It's so powerful, and it may seem like a lot of tedious work. It really isn't. It could not be simpler. All you do is you log your time. And I'll stress this part. In reality, it's not about saying, oh, it was like 10 minutes off or whatever. No, if it was 9:53 that you ended the thing and you started a new one at 9:53, that's where you put it in. Okay? And the other piece of advice that I have to simplify this whole process is that you account for any movement associated with that particular activity. So I'll give you an example. My health and wellness calendar is blocked out every other day for 2 hours, but that's start to finish for the most part. So that means that when I leave my house to when I come back, it's 2 hours. That way it's easy. I don't have to delineate that I'm driving for 20 minutes and this and that or whatever. It's that the totality of my health and wellness every other day when I go to the gym is about 2 hours. And if it isn't, if it takes me some days I'm more than 2 hours because I train a little bit more. And I just mark that. I just extend that event so that it accounts for the totality of the time that the event took. That way it breaks things down in a much simpler rhythm that will become really a lot easier for you to reflect on. And so where things really start getting powerful with this is when you look back at your week and you look back at your month and you get real fucking honest with yourself. And when you do your monthly review and you sit with how you feel about what you were able to accomplish or lack of accomplishment, if you were honest with yourself about where your time was invested and where your time was allocated, you will have a very clear picture of exactly what you did. Now, this only works if you're honest. And there's no reason you shouldn't be honest, because you're all here to be that 1% better, to be striving for progress, to move the needle forward. That's it. And the 1% isn't some big celebratory thing. But what is taking that 1%, compounding it every fucking day, and in 30 days, in 60 days, 90 days, seeing that progress. Oh, that's amazing. That's worth celebrating. That's worth saying to yourself, man, you really fucking did it. You did the thing that you said you were going to do, and here's the outcome of all that work. You can only really appreciate this if you capture it in the moment, right? Reflection is only as powerful as the data that you're able to reflect on. Everything is data, right? And once you get into the practice of documenting your life, and it doesn't have to be like in forever kind of statements, right? This could be, okay, for the next 3 months, I'm engaged in this practice because I have these projects and I want this outcome. And historically, I know that I have not always done what I said I was going to do, and that has compromised the intended output that I wanted to create. And there you go. You are then engaged in a precision representation of your time. There's no excuse. No matter what you end up doing, the only truth that you adhere to is logging it, putting it in your calendar. Take out your iPhone, use the calendar app, use Google, whatever. It doesn't fucking matter. What matters is that you do the exercise, that you take the opportunity and you demonstrate self-love and you show up for yourself and you do the thing. That's the most important. And then once you've done this for a while, you realize it's no big deal in terms of like actually doing it, right? And then the most amazing thing happens. Greater clarity comes out of this data, out of this pattern of activity. Because what you thought was going to take an hour maybe took 35 minutes. What you thought was going to take an hour actually took 3 hours. And that realization allows you to plan more effectively moving forward in the future. So part of the strategy here is that we are also retroactively modifying the events and the times based on what actually happened. So if you're scheduling a 2-hour window for whatever, golf, but it actually took 5 hours, and then the other things that you had on your calendar that you wanted to do, now you're not able to do it, right? Very simple. So you just go and extend the golf from the 2 hours to 5 hours, because that's the totality of the time that it took you to do that. And then you simply rearrange the remaining blocks, and the outcome is a much more reduced workload, and you start to prioritize organically the things that are of highest value to you. And this awareness trick is really powerful. So let me break this down in another way. Let's say your goal this month, one of your goals, is to spend more time, fill in the blank. Let's just say golf. You want to play more golf. And at the end of the month, you look back and you look at your calendar and you're like, I only played 32 hours of golf. But I watched, and I had an entertainment block, and that was 200 hours. Well, obviously, golf is not my priority. Obviously, what I'm telling myself is a lie. Because if it wasn't, then those would be reversed. Now, those are just two examples. Replace golf with spend more time with my family. Replace that with health and wellness. Replace that with advancing my career. Replace that with anything you want. But if you're truthful, if you're honest, if you're showing up with a certain level of commitment, then whatever you do is going to be reflected on your calendar. This is the very system that I use every day. I live and breathe this system because of how effective it is. Now, I use this for 3 things. Okay, number 1, without the data, my reflection practice is not as effective. First and foremost, no matter what I do, even if I have an entire day planned, but I'm like, I get to my day and I'm just fucking burnt out, or meaning burnt out in that, like, you know, maybe it's a Sunday and I feel like I haven't been spending as much time with my family as I want to, etc., etc. You know, I'm just using this as an example. You know, I try not to use words like burnt out unless they represent an identity that is perpetually in that state. But again, with this example, right? And so you have this whole day planned, but it's just something about it doesn't feel right. Just reschedule everything, but be honest with what you ended up doing. Because it only works if you're honest. It only works if you are actually representing reality. Because when you have your monthly reflection or your weekly reflection, it's not going to serve you if you're like, oh, I fucking smashed it this week. Look at how much time I invested with whatever. But then you're like lacking the output of what that time was supposed to yield. There's obviously a disconnect there. That's not serving you. That's not serving you at all. So using this as a tool to be able to empower your actions moving forward is key. That's the whole point. So then when you know, let's say you have recurring tasks every day. You know that it's historically taken you an hour to do the thing, right? But before you were allocating an hour and a half, an hour and 45 or whatever. And, you know, there's this interesting law called Parkinson's law, where it basically states work will expand the time that you allow it to. So in other words, if you give yourself 2 hours to do something, it'll take you 2 hours. If you take that same workload and you say, okay, I only have an hour, in theory, based on the law, that task will compress into that 1 hour block of time. Within reason. You're most likely not going to take a 6-month project and compress it into 24 hours, right? But you might be able to take your 6-month project and give yourself 3 months, you know? So it's an interesting exercise to get real clarity on how to properly schedule the things that you have. And then when you look at your whole 24 hours, you're like, wow, each block becomes so much more precious, right? Each block really becomes this kind of like sacred space that you have because you can reflect on your entire day. It's massive. It changes everything. Whew. So, I know I went on a massive rant here about time management and prioritization, but I think it was an important thing to talk about. Hey! Hello! So, after time management and prioritization, we go right into our optimization and refinement. You know, we've spoken a lot about this in general concept. And after optimization and refinement, we get into commencement. Commencement is simply the full integration of the blueprint framework in its entirety as a cohesive, lived identity that you're developing for yourself. And then the process starts all over again. Core values is not something you revisit every day. You're just ensuring that you are living in accordance with what you said you want. And if you're not actually living up to that standard, then maybe you don't actually know what you want. Because if you do, then you should be living in accordance with it. So that's it in a nutshell. Thank you so much for dropping in. This flow state was maybe a little bit low energy for me. And that's cool too, you know? Not forcing anything, just going with the flow. That's the whole point of flow state. Press record and just vibe. Thank you so much for dropping in. I really appreciate your presence, your commitment to yourself, your personal growth, your development. It's really a magical thing to be participating in. If you found value in this flow state episode, please engage, subscribe, like, or even better, drop a comment. Let me know where you're dropping in from. where you're from, what season of life you are currently engaged in right now. If you need support, if you have questions, go for it, man. Just drop it in the comments. If you want to connect with me deeper and semi-privately, reach out to me on Instagram, and the links are all in the show notes. Or if you want to really take it up to the next level, the best thing to do would be to drop into our Thursday live sessions and get clarity on where you are in your life. Until then, see you on Thursday for Everyday Action Live. Thanks so much for dropping in.